Good morning and thank you for joining today's webinar with TrilbyTV. I'd like to introduce Neil Emery. Neil, are you there? Good morning, Neil. Thank you for joining us.
How are you?
Very good, very good. Just before I disappear, I'm just going to mention the chat feature just on the right-hand side, guys. If you want to ask any questions about today's webinar, please do put them in the chat feature and we will pick those up at the end of the webinar. Neil, I'm going to hide myself in the background and pass over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our second Building Whole School Communication webinar in partnership with academia. I'm Neil Emery. I'm your host. I'm the man with the hat this morning, and I'm very honoured to have a fantastic guest panel with us today. So I'm going to ask them to turn on their cameras and their microphones and show themselves, if that's okay, guys. There we go. That could have been awkward. so we have a great guest panel, and thank you all for joining us this morning. So I'm going to ask all of you who you are, where you are, and what you do where you are. So let's start with Simon.
Good morning, Neil. Yeah, I am Simon Pyle. I'm Deputy Head Teacher at Anson Primary School, which is in the London Borough of Brent, not too far from the Wembley Stadium Arch.
Fantastic. And let's next go to Martin.
Hi there, I am Martin Willis. I'm the leader of digital learning here at the Edinburgh Academy. We are an independent day school for children aged 2 through to 18.
And last but definitely not least, David.
Hi there, I'm Dave Monk, and I'm e-learning development coordinator at Harlow College. It's a sort of medium-sized FE college in Essex, and we also have another campus called Stansted Airport College.
Great, thank you, Jen. So again, this is our second Building Whole School Communication webinar. We're recording it with video, so you'll be able to go back or share this with anyone else who hasn't been able to attend today. We'll also be using a Padlet wall to share our ideas and discussions as well, which we'll make available. And this session is very much about sharing, and it's looking at digital signage in the educational world and how we create more impact with it. So to start with, I think it would be good to have an introduction to how we've all experienced digital signage in our work in establishments. So from our perspective, I've got a little slide deck here, which I'm going to move through. We were Apple trainers for a long time, which is how we know some of you on the call today. So we were working with Apple in the education sector to make sure those schools and colleges buying into Apple technologies knew, how to get the most from those technologies. So that put us into a lot of schools. And one sort of device that did put us into a lot of schools was the iPad. As we all know, when the iPad came out, I see people smiling already. When the iPad came out, it went crazy for us all. This kind of consumer device, overnight, education went mad for it. And that put us as a business, Trilby back then, as a training business, probably into about 500 schools a year. So it was extremely busy. Whether that was training or presentations, we were doing a lot of training. And we would sit in school receptions waiting for a member of staff to come and grab us for that training session. And we would look at this blank digital signage screen. If it wasn't blank, it was usually playing content we felt had little impact. So it was probably that historical digital signage that had come from the commercial world. So it was clock and ticker tape and logos and not much else. But it was doing something, so I guess that was okay. We were there to create very rich content on those iPads, because that's what iPad was all about. It was about creativity. It was about looking at delivering, the curriculum in a slightly more rich way with digital content. But there was no nice way to share that content to the screen in reception. And there was usually a few reasons for that at the time when we asked the IT or a teacher. There was usually some USB stick that was in the back of the TV that didn't get updated that often. It was a bit of a faff to take it out, put it into the computer, put some new content on it and put it back in. So the screen had turned off because people had given up. Sometimes there was a laptop attached to it that was playing a PowerPoint that, again, rarely got updated. And actually, for us, that laptop could have been better utilized in the classroom with a student than sat just doing a digital signage job that actually, again, had kind of failed. Or there was some overcomplicated solution there that staff had given up with. IT didn't want to micromanage it because it was far too much time. And, it was just meant for the commercial space and not for the education space. So that's kind of what we saw. And we were often left thinking, what's this about? There must be something in place that actually addresses this issue. And that's why, coming back to this slide and having a chat with the guys about this is why 6 years ago we gave up everything we were doing in the Apple training space. And Google, at that point, we'd just written Google's transformational planning workshop for the UK to set up TrilbyTV with the aspiration to become the #1 digital signage platform made for education. And that's very important. All we do is education. So the product that we've made is only, directed for the education market. And I think that's very important. So that's how I saw digital signage. I saw a lot, and I remember one session I did. I can't remember the school down in Guildford, and they're going to tell me off because we did loads of training there. And we did a session with a group of students one day, and we did a session where we allowed them on the iPad to create an advert for their favorite thing. And there was one lad who was sat on his own, and I guess that might have meant that he was struggling to make friends, or wasn't part of the group. He made an advert about a Subaru car. We took over the screen in reception because we knew the school, and we put his advert up on the school reception screen. And he came back in while we were having lunch, and this is no word of a lie, and he told us face to face that was probably the proudest moment of his school life, seeing his advert up on that TV. And again, from that moment, we're like, we need to build something that's easy to use, but absolutely focuses on sharing and showcasing. So that's where we came from as a business. What I'll do now is I'm going to share my screen, which I think's right, and we should now see the Padlet wall. Can you guys all see that?
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Simon, moving on to you. I mean, how was your sort of introduction to digital signage?
Yeah, we had a very similar story to the one you've just told. Actually, we had our main entrance, and our digital signage was just one 32-inch TV screen that was just stuck on the wall, and it was next to the head teacher's door. So as you walked into our school, you could literally then just walk through the whole school. It was just very open plan, and there was one wall next to the head teacher's door which had a screen on, and it was literally just playing a keynote deck off of a USB slide, which wasn't that easy back in those days, because you couldn't just put a keynote deck on a USB and stick it in the side of a TV. You then had to export it into probably a movie, is what we did most of the time. And it was all really about the corporate feel. We were a school that was really trying to grow a reputation in the very early days. We had sort of 52 places for our reception children, but only about 12 or 13 children were coming. And this was back in sort of the late 90s, early 2000. And so technology was really, for us, really the carrot that was getting people into the school. And we knew that therefore we needed something as soon as they walked in. But it was really tough to manage, because you ended up with what was effectively a movie that was very rarely changed. It was quite clever in the way it looked, because we built in animations that made it look like it was a news screen sort of ticker tape. And you'd have some of the calendar, and you'd have the term dates, and you might have like the school vision up there, but you weren't really displaying anything that was live or changeable. It was changed when we had the time to change it. And that was very rare, because we built it so it didn't need changing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, listening to that, when you've got lots of things going on a screen, sometimes for us that can be a bit confusing. Do you think that's true, that actually when you look at the real world, it's all about full screen content has the most impact? Do you think that's true of that?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken a lot with our staff actually about signal and noise, and about making sure that you don't have too much noise on any slide, whether it's in the classroom or on a display screen. It's the signal that's the most important, and the message really needs to be as clear as it can and as simple as it can, because people don't have time. They're passing through most zones. You need to capture their attention quickly in the simplest way you can.
Yeah, I think if you look at the real world of signage and advertising, it's full screen, and if they're the professionals at this job, then that kind of confused us back in the day. Why have I got a ticker tape and a clock and a logo and all this stuff? Because actually I don't know what I'm looking at. you know, there's so much going on the screen. Actually, I can't take in probably the most important message you're trying to throw at me. And just another question, I always like the reception screen. I think the reception screen is great. And, you know, you're going to have content on there that, like you say, promotes your brand. You might have a head teacher's message on there. You might have your Twitter feed full screen on there. You might have, you know, parent quotes, I always think is a good one, or alumni slides, you know, showing why you're an amazing school. But I always think that if you're going to make more impact, then you have to grow that estate of signage screens. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think and it's important as to where they are, because that depends on their intention. And the intent behind a screen needs to be for the audience that's going to be seeing it. So you need a screen that maybe in reception does have that corporate feel, but also has that feel that you want people to get your vision as soon as they walk in. You want them to get what you're about and understand the ethos almost straight away. Whereas other screens might be about creating that sense of pride and that sense of joy and the sense of sharing amongst the school community and the children themselves. So they have a different purpose depending on where they are.
Yeah, it's really important to think about who your viewers are and the content that's going to obviously have impact for those viewers. Absolutely. Martin, what about your historical signage experience?
Yeah, well, my first experience of signage in our school was back when I was there as a class teacher in our primary school. And the frustration I had, because I knew I wanted to put all this digital content out for the world to see within our school community. And to do that, I had to engage with the IT department, which at that time was there was very much a disconnect between the teaching side and the IT support side. And it involved me, we had this one LAN system, which meant I had to send content down to the IT department, who for us are on a different site. They then had to upload it to this one LAN system. And it got to the point where I was having to go around the screens in our school with my phone out, taking photos of the screens and sending that to the IT department and saying, no, this isn't working. This is what I'm seeing. And they had no way of really knowing what I was seeing on a different site. And I, was having to stand there recording videos of what was playing through the screens to send back to them. And it just didn't work. And we got frustrated with it and fed up with it. And as a result, like everyone has said, the screens just were never updated. And we got to the point where our screens really, especially at receptions, were just doing that ticker tape. We had the ability to show BBC News, the BBC News channel on our screen, which was lovely for the lady sitting on reception who could keep up to date with what was happening in the world. But there are quite often times when you don't want your 5 and 6 and 7-year-old children walking past reception seeing what's happening on the news.
Yeah.
So as a result, they were switched off, and that was it.
There is historical stuff here, though, isn't there? I mean, we do, as a company, get asked about the news. It certainly was never our focus because A, it's quite biased, to be honest, and B, there is some nasty stuff that will pop up on the news because they are covering, nasty stuff in the world at times. We always wanted to promote that sharing and showcasing, that's for sure. But I think that news piece is quite historical. It's what screens via solutions like One LAN were able to do. Where, again, for us, it's about sharing and showcasing all the good stuff. And I think IT managing, this is a marketing tool, isn't it? So it kind of confuses me why IT would be put in charge of managing that sort of solution anyway.
Exactly, absolutely. And it's really just about shifting that focus of why have we got these screens and what are we wanting to do with them. And I suppose back in the day, our IT team were very much made up of network managers and technical experts. And it's been a huge part of our focus really has been trying to get that connection between teaching and learning and the actual tech support. And the ability now to share responsibility for signage with class teachers has been a huge step forward for us. Yeah,
they must almost be glad that they don't have to manage that tiresome upload process that you used to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And just to say, by the way, One LAN is a great product. It's a big product, and I would say it's absolutely more focused in the commercial world. So I don't want anyone to think we would knock anyone else's solution in this, because that's not what it's about. Dave, it sounds like you didn't have no signage at Harlow.
Right, so we displayed bare walls. If you remember, Neil, when you came to visit us back in the day when you were still doing Apple training, and we were at the beginning of a journey at that point, really. So that the whole world of digital for us was something that we aspired to, and it was really part of our move to rolling out iPads for all our staff and students. Was also, well, how else can we make ourselves visible, if you like, to the college community, to the people visiting college. We had sort of odd things that we would do. Well, it wasn't odd, but information would be conveyed through our VLE. So if you logged onto a computer and you logged onto the Cube, as we call it, our Moodle VLE, then you would see the banner headlines running across that. We had an odd little niche thing, and this goes back several years when we used to we still do have journalism courses, but we would have the students in the building where journalism is taught, and they would have a TV screen with rolling news, and that would be about it. So yeah, it was a pretty bare scenario that you saw, and obviously we discussed with your good selves about where we could go with that. So it made a big difference for us going forward to actually build that into our approach to digital, really.
Do you think how was the sort of investment setting it up? Did it feel like a big investment?
Not really, no. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, the logistics of getting it set up in the right places has been sort of a challenge. I can think of one screen that we set up in one of the corridors in one of our buildings that was too high to reach and turn on, and it was never switched on. And so again, going back to the role of IT had the business of moving screens about. It wasn't something that we could do. So we had to then, make a pitch to them. We need the screen in reception. We had to ensure that it could be set up in reception, because that's where the screen should have been. The one that we had there sadly moved away because it was needed elsewhere, because there's always a challenge on the resources you've got. And we were using, and do use quite often, our sort of screens for teaching rooms as well. And there was a need for our screen in reception to go to our new campus at that point over at Stansted. So we barely had it running for a year before it had to be taken away. And there was, we were back to a bare wall. And that, that was sort of still an ongoing challenge for us to get that sorted out. Yeah.
Just to say that screen is on wheels, by the way. It's not, you didn't have to lift it up and lug it.
No.
And I think that comes on nicely to the next part, which is considerations. For us, I'm not sure we felt signage had ever been a success in education. It'd probably come in, I don't know, building schools for the future, or it was the next big thing at some point, and in came these screens up on walls. But I don't think there was any planning behind the success and the impact and the outcomes from signage, what it could do. The screen one is an interesting one now. I recently had a demo with a school who had a new school back in the day. They had a 9-screen video wall up very high, where they need one of these cherry pickers to get up there now, because 3 of the screens have broken. So, and they're not even 3 in a row. So they're 3 random screens out of a 9-screen video wall. So they're a bit knackered, to be honest. But planning is very important. Having ideas of grandeur is great. But again, if there's no plan for when screens do go down or anything like that, then it's going to cost you in the long run. So I think the next question is about considerations for successful digital signage. Again, on the Padlet wall, which it's easy, it's padlet.com/ it's up there in the top. I'll share this in the chat as well, but it's padlet.com/Neil Emery, capital N and E, and then /communication. There's some stuff on here that will be really useful to those on the webinar today, and we'll share this afterwards again. One of my favorite multi-academy trusts that I'm working with at the moment is Shirelands Academies Trust in the West Midlands, and they've created a plan document for their digital signage. So it's not in a huge amount of schools right now, it's in 8 of their schools, but they've created a plan with guidelines and expectations about brand and ideas of content, which you can download this example of their plan. I meet with them on a regular basis. I deliver training to all their schools on a regular basis. So they've really taken this sort of building whole school communication across all of their schools very, seriously, and made sure that there's an absolute plan behind it. There's also on here as well a protocol document from RGS Worcester as well about their use of TrilbyTV, but also signage at their schools as well. So feel free to download and use those. On to you, Simon. What do you think is important to be in place in regards to successful sharing and showcasing digital signage at your school?
Most of the things that have been a big success at our school are almost pupil driven. If you think about I mean, certainly when I was at school, my work was very much just for me and my teacher. And my handwriting was never good enough to make it onto the wall. So the teacher was the only person that saw my work. And when parents' evening came around, I definitely didn't want my parents to see my handwriting. And in fact, my head teacher told me not to try and do joined up handwriting, just squeeze the letters closer together and it will look like it's joined up. And for me, when you have pupils who want to share their work beyond the classroom, and you see that puff of pride when their work appears on a screen, that's what inspires often the teachers to then, because teachers are very competitive, to then try and showcase their children's work in the classroom and onto the screen. So it has to be really simple to use. That's kind of the number one for me. If it's simple to use for the teachers to be able to upload things, and so being able to select 24 images from an iPad of work that you've taken and literally send them on into the cloud of Trilby has been just fantastic for us. And some of our most reluctant teachers to share are sharing content. We had some great stuff from nursery just this week, who traditionally feel like they're a bit separate from everything else. And we're trying to draw them in. And all of a sudden, we've now got this amazing content of their spaceship that they've made in nursery, and all of these little children in their spaceship cardboard outfits on the wall that now we're able to share with the whole school. So all of a sudden, they're part of the community, and it's because it's so simple for them to upload the images and just for us to approve it and pop it onto the screen. That when you're talking about workload and work-life balance, that simplicity and that ease and that speed is everything. But it's generally driven by the fact that people want to be competitive and show their work and say, well, hang on, my classroom is great and my children are just as proud of their work.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It becomes competitive. The kids have an appetite, don't they, to see their work? Absolutely, they do. Do you think they see it as almost like their own TV channel?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have on our website, we have our own TV channel called Anson TV. And that's really where we upload a lot of our video content. So our film festival in November, all of the films get loaded that are submitted for the film festival onto Anson TV. But at the end, what we do with Trilby is we create a sort of a 3-minute, I guess, showcase of all of the work. And we have that playing constantly throughout on Trilby TV. So they get to see everybody's work in one place. But it's absolutely imperative, I think. And I also think that what you have to have is the ability to be able to share that internally on your screens, but be able to flip that externally as well, because ultimately you want to give the children a wider audience. They've got a voice, they've got a lot to say. There are a lot of issues in the world that they want to comment on at the moment and that they want to respond creatively to. So you need to put them in touch with people outside of the world as well. And so being able to share a public link of their work that they've done with somebody like Rob Biddulph, the artist, or we've had Jeff Kinney, the author, we share the Trilby TV slides out to them. And then we get responses from the genuine authors and the genuine artists in response to their work, which is even more of a puff of pride and a reinforcement of how good their work is.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons, again, we developed Trilby TV in the first place, to be able to share that digital content that students were making. And it's real world, isn't it? I mean, to have on my CV at year 5 or 6 already at Anson Primary School, I managed the digital signage at my school. That's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very interesting with our digital leader applications at the moment that are going through. And we've had 25, I think, in the first 3 days of children filling in this form. And one of the things they want to do is to be able to control the systems in the school. And they give me the reasons and the skills why they can do that. And they recognize straight away that there are things that happen in the school that deserve to be shared. It's not even that they want to share it. They deserve to be shared because they're good quality pieces of work, or they're insightful, or they're just proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, we do. Sometimes I'll get people, staff, IT, who say to me, we're just too busy to keep stuff up to date. And I'm like, well, you've got a workforce of people to do this for you. Why aren't the students doing it as part of their learning? Designing content, talking to each other about content that's needed for different screens. All the sort of staff need to do is kind of manage that process, I would have thought.
Yeah, and actually just to listen to the children. So we have in our newsletter every week, we have a little banner that says whose birthdays it is this week. And one of the children came up and said, couldn't we put that on TrilbyTV? So we're like, well, yeah, absolutely we could. Let's do it. So we end up now with this video that just blasts for 10 seconds on repeat with a happy birthday blast of song. We try and make it as loud as possible. So over the dinner hall, it only plays at dinner time. You get all of this puff of, oh, it's so-and-so's birthday this week. And this week it's extra long because we're covering half term as well. So it's a suggestion. If you listen to the children, they'll tell you the direction it needs to go.
Not rocket science, as I always say. Martin, picking up on your comments on the Padlet wall ownership, which I know we've talked about with the students, but that is massively important. You've got to have some idea of who will be keeping this content up to date, haven't you? And the content relevance for the screens.
Absolutely. And we are still, I'm saying we're still relatively new to the world of Trilby, but we've been with you for almost 2 years now. But we signed up just before we went into a global pandemic. So our focus shifted very much from where I thought this was going to go to where it had to go upon reopening. So our audience has very much been students and staff. We've not really had parents back in school yet. So we've had to rethink our focus on content a little bit there. But in terms of ownership, just think about who are those, we're not quite at the point yet where our pupils are heavily engaged and taking responsibility for it. My focus has really been trying to identify those members of staff who are keen and are going to run with this and are going to show to others the full potential of what can be done. So, I put the email out to kind of heads of department initially, and was overwhelmed by the comeback from members of staff who I perhaps hadn't expected to get the first responses from, but they worked in key areas of the school. So, staff in the science department wanted to showcase what's happening in the world of science. Our librarians were one of the first groups that came back to me. They wanted to showcase content about, new books and, the fact the library was open again. There was, the health and safety manager wanting to get content out about reopening and logistics of reopening. So, there's so many different key parties that have got interest in this. So just trying to identify those people who are going to lead the way, who are going to listen to the guidance that you give them about expectations and, volume of content. And they're going to, bring others along with them. And that's what we're where we are at the moment. We're really trying to grow that team. The teachers are now coming on board. Now that things are starting to feel a little bit more normal in the school day, because I was very aware of throwing anything new at our staff during, the early weeks and months of reopening. But that idea of competition and the fact that staff want to showcase what's happening in their classrooms. And I'm now having to try and speed up and catch up with them in terms of getting more screens on the wall, because we're quite limited with the number of screens we've got, especially at our senior school campus. So it's now trying to think, right, where do we need these screens and who are the audience that we're trying to hit with these screens? Because at the senior school, my focus is very much on student engagement through screens. Whereas at the junior school, yes, I want screens with pupil-created content, but it's much more focused on parents and what parents are seeing when they come into school. So it's interesting just trying to think about those different audience needs.
In regards to ownership, I always like the fact that there's competition often with department heads. So once science, geography have got a screen, then they come and knock on your door and say, I like the idea of that.
Yeah.
What about sort of quality of content? Is that something you monitor or you worry about, or is it just pure trust that you allow people to do what they want?
So we are quite. I mean, I'm guilty of it as well. My background is in marketing. My first degree was a marketing degree, and we are quite a brand aware school. So we are quite keen to keep, consistency in our presentation of content. I wouldn't say it's something I'm worried about, because as far as I'm concerned, at the moment, the more content I've got, the better. And the ability to moderate that before it goes live is, helpful. We have got a set of brand guidelines that we share with staff. The things that I'm most cautious of, telling staff to be aware of is not throwing 30 photographs of what your maths class were up to this morning on the screen at reception. 1 or 2 photos of real quality is much more impactful.
Yeah.
So the volume of photos in a slideshow, but also thinking about where you're sharing your content. So I don't really want my primary 1 teachers sending me 10 photographs of outdoor learning to the senior school geography screen, but they might think that's the most important thing that's happened in the school today. So it's trying to give that bigger picture and an understanding of this network of screens. And that's interesting to manage, but I wouldn't say it's causing me any great concern or hassle.
I guess at least they're excited
Exactly
about sharing content, but we need to remind them there's an art to digital signage, and again, my co-director, Ben, has certainly suggested to schools who get in touch with us about going out and looking at the real world of digital signage and seeing what content is in the train station or is in the shopping centre, because that content is having an impact on you as a person.
Yeah.
If there's an H&M advert when you're in Bullring Shopping Centre, it's trying to get you into that shop to buy something. Schools are no different, and it's about understanding that screens need to have content that's sharp, interesting, changes, probably, I would say, around 6 to 8 bits of content that, is updated on a regular basis. So, and definitely something, again, that plays into a bit of a plan. And I guess, David, at college level, screen location and purpose of content is even more important, because you're 1 stage away from learners going into the real world of work, right?
We are. I was just sort of reflecting as the other guys were talking, really, that the sort of ownership and deployment of screens is going to be really important. One of our most successful screens is one that's managed by our team of staff who are involved in supporting students into apprenticeships and into employment. That's without doubt probably one of our most successful screens we have in the college. But overall, across the entire institution, there is always a bit of a danger and a fear that we may have sort of slipped a little bit into that area of running it rather centrally from one team, which is my team, rather than sort of allowing other people to take ownership of their screens. So the only other areas that do that is reception through marketing, and the performing arts team, in fact. So there's a way to go, even though we've been involved now for quite a long time. But I think stepping back for a moment and just having a bit of a think about, well, where else can we do this? What else can we do? And again, it comes back perhaps to that relationship to our IT team, but it's also about our access to the resources. When you asked me the question at the beginning about the costs, obviously there is a cost to us to have screens that we can deploy in that way. But we do need to really sort of revisit that, because I think, as I noted in the comments on Padlet Wall, relevance and timeliness are important, but you've got to have the content to put out there, and you've got to put that ownership into a whole range of people's hands. We have digital leaders, for instance, and our student digital ambassadors. All of those can make a great contribution, and we do an awful lot that we sometimes don't really tell the world about enough, and that includes our own community, our own world. Our work as an EdTech demonstrators school, for instance, or college, is a sort of key piece of information where we've had visitors from outside. things like the sort of pandemic did disrupt quite a lot of what we wanted to do and were doing. And in a way, we're trying to get back into steps. So I think this is a good opportunity, going back to how I sort of started this, with a chance to actually have a sort of rethink about where we want to go and how we want to develop what we're doing.
Yeah, I think again, it's about having that little plan. And often with customers, we'll just get some sticky notes out, and each sticky note represents a screen. A screen location. We'll work out who the audience is, the amount of time they have to spend with that screen. It's a very finite amount of time, of course, and the content that needs to be in place and what applications we're going to use to create that content. So having a little plan that you come up with that changes a couple of times a year is not a bad thing. Harlow College, we know well because we did vision and plan, or, we were a big part of that iPad one-to-one project. And if that plan wasn't in place, I don't think you would be where you guys are today. So signage might feel a little bit of a lesser, but actually having a small plan in place that you revisit a couple of times is not a bad idea.
Yeah, no, I agree totally.
All right, well, listen, again, on the Padlet wall, for anyone who's on, there's that plan from Shilands, which is a really nice plan. There's some protocol stuff from RGS. I'm sure if the guys have got some of this as well, we'll upload it to the Padlet wall in the next few days. Moving on to examples of success and where. From my perspective, last time I really liked the alumni slides idea from Clevedon, which I think I can pop that up. So in the reception area and the sixth form area, they have some really nice alumni slides that play, which I really liked. Because again, it gives students aspiration to go on and be absolutely as successful as students previous to them. So that was one of my favorite ideas from the last session that we did. And I also like, just building that community is really important. Chris's example from Portsmouth when they got back from COVID was, guys, we've got this. Just simple slides that told us we're amazing, and just keep that positive feeling going in what were extremely tough times. So that's a couple of my examples there. Simon, I like who knows whose nose. You want to tell me about this?
Yeah. It's just responding to events, really. I mean, this is just a bit of ridiculousness that just engages people to look at the slides for a little bit longer, because the beauty of having something on here is, can you work out which teachers they are, first of all, from having their red noses on? It gives our Red Nose Day sales a bit of a boost, but of course they're hooked on trying to find out who it is when the next slide comes on with some pieces of work or a key piece of information. So sometimes some of the most successful slides are the ones that just make people linger looking at the screen, and then you capture them with what's coming next.
Yeah, because again, if we're not getting people to look at those screens, we're kind of failing with the whole point of signage in the first place, aren't we?
We are, and there's a danger that if you don't do something that changes and is engaging, then you just end up with something on the wall, a display that people aren't looking at. So it's important.
And this one, which I really love the story behind this.
Yeah, so Zane is he was relatively new in year 5. He's not the most confident of children, but he's got this amazing coat. His coat is just looks so warm, and it's got one of those hoods that's got more fur on it than most animals, but it's all fake fur. And he walks in and you can barely see him, but every morning he'll give you a good morning. And he loves Jeff Kinney's Wimpy Kid books, so he took it upon himself to start drawing all of the covers of all of the books. And every day he'd bring them in and he'd show us, and we'd be like, "That's amazing, take it in." And then Mr. Diamond, who's one of our brilliant teacher assistants, his name's actually Neil Diamond. He does go on stage and sing when we force him to. But he laminated them all for him, and he's using them as bookmarks in the books that the titles are of. So we just said to him, "Look, when you finish them all, let us know, and we'll take some pictures of them." We didn't tell him that we were going to send them to Jeff Kinney, but we sent them, and then we said, "Can we post it up on on TrilbyTV. We weren't really asking for Jeff Kinney's permission to do that, but the "and yes, of course" in the middle is him saying we can post them on TrilbyTV. So yeah, Jeff Kinney is now a fan, obviously, of Zane's work.
Awesome.
Zane's hood's come down on the way into school because he wants his face to be seen because he's now famous and has a puff of chest. So yeah, it's amazing. It's the hood effect, we call it, of TrilbyTV.
I love the hood effect of TrilbyTV. Yeah, and 30 likes on his Twitter there, and 5 retweets, which is pretty good.
It's even higher now. I think it's been seen by something like 5,000 or 6,000 people.
That's awesome.
And wow. We've now got our Shakespeare company who are asking Zane to design their Christmas card. So it just snowballs. It's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Martin, your kind of COVID bubble graphic, I guess this is a bit more information led, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as cheery or pleasant a story, but we've got one particularly large screen at our senior school reception, and we wanted a really clear graphic. And whilst it doesn't look particularly clear on the small screen I'm looking at here, and just, really taking time to make that information as clear and as simple as it possibly could be. So this graphic was shared with parents and students before they came back to school. So they were already familiar with it, but then just making sure that it was on that big screen. It was the only thing on that big screen as soon as they came in our front gate. And then for the first few weeks coming back, it was just constantly on loop in amongst our content on our other senior school screens, just making sure that people were in the right place at the right time and coming in through the right gates. But a really simple way for us to get that content out to kids.
Yeah. Do you think signage has been useful for this awful time that COVID has brought us?
Hugely useful, and also just hugely useful to put a positive slant on things, a bit like the example you were showing earlier, just having those positive messages. We have the very drab branded signs of welcome to our school that appear on our screens, and welcome to the science department, and welcome to the geography department. But just tweaking those slightly on that first day back, just saying welcome back and making them a little bit more lighthearted and a little bit more engaging. A really simple thing to do, but it did have impact. At Christmas time, we put a snowy animation over them, and there's little things like that you do that actually just draw people's attention into your content. But yeah, in terms of actually getting serious information out there, we had Scottish Government animations and slideshows that we had to get out to our student body. So being able to pop them on our screens and have them on loop as well at the senior school has been really useful.
And moving on from that, a bit more fun, but I've seen recently you've got a new screen in the library which looks fantastic. So
we do.
This is
actually our yeah, absolutely. So sorry, I'm interrupting you, Neil.
No, you're good. You're good. Sorry, Martin. Sorry.
You go. So this was our senior school librarian who got this started. When we first brought in Trilby, she was one of the first people to come back to me and say, I really want to use this. I've been wanting to get stuff on screens for years. And she's really engaged with it. And she uses apps such as the Sora app, which I think provides her with a lot of good, engaging content. And then she's able to adapt that. And I'm not sure how she's expecting that circular QR code to work, but I might have to question that one. But she's been brilliant at putting book recommendations up, and she's got a book club that meet on a weekly basis, and they've been creating content that she shares on the screen, and she's engaging with Twitter and the library account on Twitter. So yeah, we've now got a new librarian down at the junior school who's kind of hooked onto that. And as you saw, on our Twitter feed, we gave her a new screen just a couple of weeks ago, and she's already finding it much easier to engage with authors and publishers and to bring their voice into the library.
Do you think, what about student involvement in book reviews? Could that be video content with a student talking about, their experience of reading such a book?
Absolutely. I mean, what we're doing a lot at the moment is using Flipgrid with our book groups. So our kids create video book reviews. Flipgrid creates a augmented reality QR code, which goes into the book. And we're now putting those QR codes onto TrilbyTV as well, so that kids can come up to the screens, scan the Flipgrid QR code, and see, one of their peers reviewing that book for them. So a lot more engagement and long-term engagement with content.
I love this connectivity. You're always going to have that set of apps, aren't you, or applications that you use that just work well together.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on in terms of our strategy is giving our kids the skills to make those decisions and to think, right, what do I need to do? What's the right tool for this job? And it might well be that you need 3 or 4 tools to complete a task. And it's the same when I'm creating content or getting others to create content for TrilbyTV. I create a lot of my content on Keynotes, then I'll bring in QR codes from Flipgrid, and it's all about that app smashing, as we used to call it.
App smashing, yeah. And by the way, that QR code does work. I just tried it.
Oh, brilliant. You see, I should have had more faith.
Yeah. And David, I love this one. Because I had a very posh meal at the weekend for my lady's birthday, but I just love that sharing of the students' accomplishments.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is really using Trilby at its best for us, where student work is displayed, and they produce such wonderful creations in our hospitality area. Our catering students are absolutely brilliant at things like this. But also, you'll find that performing arts, art, any of the creative areas are also very good. But we try to include where we can the work that our trades do. Our wonderful students in carpentry, we haven't got an example of this here, but we have had it on display. They love their iPads so much, and they use them extensively, again with Padlet walls and with QR codes. But they made stands out of wood for their iPads, and they're really, really quite a wonderful piece of creation. So this whole creative spirit is very much something that we do try to capture. So yeah, I'm delighted with that as well. I think it's a good example.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at Martin's, no, I'm not picking on you here, Martin, because you need a menu for stuff. But we often get asked about menus, and we're trying to find a really nice way to create something that brings menus to another dimension. But I think when I have conversations with our customers, they're actually getting the students involved, maybe, or taking pictures of the food, or taking pictures of the food being made, even kind of brings those dinner hall screens to life a bit more, rather than just a flat menu on that screen. So that's why I love this picture, David. I was thinking that's a great idea, and again, one we promote to our customers as much as we can. You use it for your enrollment stuff as well a lot, don't you?
We do. Again, it was one of those things that it's quite a complex and busy procedure that we run through. And so the TVs are absolutely brilliant for this, because you can have this whole series of slides and more than one screen, in fact, directing people to the right place. And just as that one-off key point of the year, which is a real sort of pressure point for us, the signage has been absolutely brilliant, and this is a good example of that.
Yeah, and we, as you know, have an unlimited screen license. So for enrollment, you could add as many extra screens as you want.
Yeah, absolutely, and we have done that. And in fact, in the last sort of round of enrollments this last year, we've had to enroll in different locations. So again, the support of the screens has been very important for that as well. We've tried to sort of create zones, as it were, across the college, and we showed that again when we were back in college before the lockdown last year. That the zoning and the whole sort of COVID story, the notifications that people needed to be aware of were all included in the signage that was running. The examples that we show on the screens there in the area outside the iHub in the reception area all had the COVID sort of information running through them. I just like the idea of just jumping aside from it, and this is where in my former professional career as a librarian, I love the fact that the school have got the librarians on board. I think that's really good. Often people don't appreciate just how tech savvy and willing librarians are, and have been historically for a long time, to sort of use anything that's out there that helps promote their services, helps to encourage people to read. So I think that's a great example. I think I might go and borrow that at some point.
Yeah, that's a nice point, David. Absolutely, because we should be encouraging young people to read more. Actually, I personally need to read more. But yeah, historically, in Australia, where we've got a few customers, it's digital signage, very historical, actually, with the librarian more than anyone else, actually. So it's interesting, these different parts of the world have different focuses. As like last time, we're running out of time again. Probably I talk too much. There's always so much to talk about. I'm going to do sharing beyond the screen. So, you know, we're talking about screens inside the school, or, you know, these mechanisms within the school. One of the things I like, just me first, is you can do live web stream with your signage, or you certainly can with ours. If I can bring up a window. So I've got a little webcam out my window running off a Chromebook, and as it doesn't load now, that will teach me, won't it? But I've got a live stream running from YouTube live stream, which, go on. There you go. So don't get jealous of my view, everybody, but that's outside my window today. And I love that, because like primary school, Simon, you'll be doing the chickens hatching once a year, I'm guessing. So that could be something that easily could be live streamed. What about I'm going to load up your example as well. It's Black History Month at the moment, and you've got some of our Black Pioneer slides embedded into your website, haven't you?
We have, yeah. We have. The focus this year has all been about each class choosing somebody that maybe isn't so well known and isn't as well renowned, I guess, for their achievements, and really trying to celebrate those and bring them together. So the Black Pioneers really helps. But last year we also ran our own kind of Black Postbox competition. They were painting some of the postbox around the country to represent the achievements, and we just felt that we needed to look at who our icons were and who we wanted to celebrate, and posted the children's achievements out as well onto that page. And it's interesting you're talking about librarians, because one of the first things that happens in year 6 is the children think about where reading could take them. So they look at one of their favorite authors and they think, okay, so what scenario is that? Is it the moon? Is it a forest? And so we then use green screen to put the children into that scenario, post a few of the books that are set in those settings, and then screen those as well. So they sit onto our website to allow people to think about, okay, what could I read on our kind of like a Bookflix, Netflix style sort of web experience. And
yeah,
more and more, a lot of that content goes out now to the website and is publicly accessible.
Yeah, I mean, we just create URL, embed code, QR code for content you upload to us. Is it fairly simple to embed that code into your website?
Yeah, it's really simple. It's effectively it's a text box, so you click on a source code and drop the HTML in, and it's brilliant. And you can obviously adjust sizes as well to fit the page. But the live stream is really exciting because particularly when you consider the inability to get parents in, and if numbers keep creeping up like they are, then potentially some of the things that we were planning to do will need to be locked down. And so having the ability to live stream content from the school will be a great way of being able to give children access to what's happening, not just in other classrooms, but for parents to be able to access what's happening in the school as well.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, we use YouTube live stream. Obviously, if you want to, like I said, I'm just using a cheap Chromebook and a cheap webcam to do that right now. So yeah, very possible. Martin, you embed some of your content into your learning platform, don't you?
I'm on mute. How long have we been doing this? And I'm still on mute. I mean, this is just a screenshot from our VLE website, which is accessible to pupils, staff, and parents. And it's by no means, new stuff or going to send shockwaves through our community. But for years historically, we've had this daily notices process at our senior school where staff had to send emails to the reception, get them to collate all these notices. It was then sent out to all staff in the morning, and staff had to read these notices out to their form classes to try and get the key bits of information out to student body. Now all we have is this PowerPoint, which is kept up to date in from at the office, and it's dropped into that TrilbyTV, and then that's automatically, because we use the embed codes, it automatically updates in our website, and that's where staff go in the morning, or students know they can go, or parents can go, and they get that daily update of latest information. So just having that connection between the screens and the website has been much easier, and it means this librarian's updating the information in one place, and out it goes.
Yeah. Again, we always wanted to build a platform that allowed sharing beyond the school. Remember stories of, especially in the independent sector, parents would come to pick their kids up and ask them what they'd done that week, and the kids would go, "Oh, not a lot." And the teachers were there going, "Hold on, what do you mean not a lot? We've been on, we've had cricket this week, we've been on trips, etc., etc." But kids being kids, they never wanted to kind of promote what they'd done and let anyone know they'd had a good week. So this was a way that for us we could share it beyond the school.
Yeah.
Again, time is upon us, David. I mean, I'll move on to that last question: why digital signage? Because with your embedding, it sounds like you're doing the same sort of stuff as Martin, and embedding that into BLEs and websites. One sentence from you all, David, starting with you. Why digital signage?
Okay, so really, it is about building that community, and I think that was covered well at the beginning of the talk by one of the other presenters. So I think it is a key part of what we're about, what we want to do. We want to show what the college community is within the community of the college, but also it's about people who visit the college, people who have an interest in the college. Whether it's parents, whether it's, dare I say it, the inspectors coming to the college, some things that sort of illustrate what we're about, what our community is about, the achievements within the college, and just overall, it's how we live, if you like, what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. It is about building community. We got these screens around the place; they've been there a while. Why aren't we using them to help build that community? Simon, let's go to you next. Why digital signage?
It's about giving children a voice and an audience in the simplest way possible.
Beautiful. I knew you would say that. And again, that makes me very happy, because again, that's absolutely the reason we developed TrilbyTV in the first place. Naively, we didn't know we were going into this world of digital signage, which we're in, but absolutely, we built it, sharing and showcasing voice and ownership. That's exactly why we built this platform. Martin, let's end with your good self.
Yeah, I mean, for me as a teacher, it's all about the fact that my kids are now creating so much more digital content, and I want to be able to share that. And, I dream of the day when I walk into a classroom and there is a screen in the middle of a display board, and teachers are updating that content in the same way they would have spent time changing out their classroom displays. That's kind of what we're wanting to work towards.
Yeah, and again, from our Apple days, I think we always wanted to evidence the journey you guys are on, and we felt like having signage to be able to share content to, if anybody walked into that school and said, "Show me the success of your one-to-one project," well, there it is, guys. Yeah. Constantly updated on our screens. So absolutely the reason why. I will stop sharing. Am I stop sharing? Well, listen, time has flown by. Thank you so much. We didn't quite get through everything, but I really want to thank you all for joining. You're all beautiful people, and people that I love and respect very much. So thank you for joining us this morning. Ryan, I just quickly will put the Padlet into there, like so. So there's the Padlet in there, but Ryan will share the Padlet wall link, and you'll share the video of this today. And also I'll share some of my details in that email as well. Is that okay, Ryan? Or do I need to share? Is that okay?
No, that's all good. So we'll get it up onto our YouTube channel later on, and then we'll share that with yourself, and you can push that out via your social channels.
Fantastic.
But yeah, no, huge thank you.
Yes, it was hugely enjoyable. Some really, really useful information there. And again, thanks to our panel. Thanks, David. Thanks, Simon. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Ryan. And thanks, Academia, for allowing us to run this whole school communication webinar. And I'd like to think we'll do another one again very soon. So thank you all for joining us. Have a good day all. And be good.
That's great. I'll just play the out video now, and yeah, if you want to just turn your mics off and cameras, that would be great. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us, and yeah, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Many thanks.